Morning, guys. Sarah Kenny Alley again. Today I just brought in Aaron's car. We're going to go on a ride. Her birthday's coming up, so we're going to just take a ride out. We live in Pennsylvania. There's a lot of Amish on the lake outskirts, but it's about an hour and a half drive, and you drive around a lot. She just bought a Dodge Charger, a 2007, across the neighbor that lives directly behind me. I live through, the garage is 3 houses up from my house for that long, commute home. But just brought it in. We heard a clunking sound in the front. We couldn't quite pin it down. I shook down the front end before. I mean, it was tight. Logan, Randy's son, he did a lot of work on it, and I kind of supervised over it, if not helped him on some things, but, made sure he was safe on it. But just wanted to double check everything. And here it's a bearing on the upper bearing plate on the strut tower. They go bad. I know a lot. The one on the driver's side's bad, and that's the sound we keep hearing. But I'll show you that in a second. But being that was a quick diagnosis, and I thought I was going to be, possibly beating in the ball joint, something like that on it. I'm going to just I got my Autel, the MP808. At the time, it was the cheapest bidirectional scanner I could get. Now there's Top Dawn, there's Launch. I mean, there's a lot of bidirectional scanners, but if you're getting into this or something, you're definitely going to need the bidirectional. The code readers, they're fast. I have Harbor Freight. I think it's a ZR13. That thing's fast. If I need to know what the code is right now, it's quicker than booting up any tablet. But I'm going to plug it in. I like recording all the live data, and the engine light isn't on. You just record everything, make a file, you save it. So that way when the engine light does come on, and a lot of times there's hidden codes in there. This one doesn't do all the modules and the communication. It's an older one, like it's 2 years expired on the updates, but chances of me seeing a 2022 anytime in the near future isn't all that great. And being that was a quick diagnosis, I'm going to use the scope. I like doing charging tests, check out the starter, the alternator, the battery. Just visually inspect everything too. Logan took great care of it. Previous owner took great care of it. So, it's a pretty good car. And, you save on waveforms. You save everything. So, if you know the car, if you're doing this and you have customers, you make a file. Yeah, these all got SD cards. I mean, you could save as many 8-scope images as you want. You could save as many images on your scanner as you want. Save them. That'll save you looking up a lot of things if you already have not just a known good, but you know how that car ran whenever the engine light wasn't on. But thinking of what tests to do, that's definitely one I want to do. The battery is in the trunk, so I don't know if I'm going to use an amp clamp, but I wanted to use 2 channels on the 8-scope on the HS512. But then, a lot of people getting that Hantek, the 1008C. So I'm going to just see if I could do a charging test on it. On the intake, I got a rock key. It's a pulse sensor. I'm going to plug it into the intake. It call them a lot of times the first look sensors. It's going to check the mechanical condition of the engine real quick. I don't suspect nothing, but every car you get, you want to see, they're all going to be different, how they're going to pull on the intake. This doesn't have a very central location, so we will have to keep that in mind. I watch Eugene's videos on Rocky.com. He actually shows you how to use it. It's just their subtitles you got to watch. But, it's a pretty decent sensor. It's pretty quick to set up, and I'm going to take his advice on it. I'm going to use the Hantek, but if I only had 2 channels, I could run the pulse sensor on one channel and do a charging test quickly on the other channel. So in one test, you're checking the engine mechanical, and we're not going to want to sync for the pulse yet. If there's no problem, don't go probing the coil unless you want to, because if there's no problem, test is over. And then if you do see a problem, you already did your charging test, you already found a problem. Then you want to sync with the same cable that you were doing the charging test with. You want to sync to an injector, sync to a coil. I was thinking on if you could get to the coil using a paddle probe, but hey, you already got one lead on the battery checking the charging system. So straight into, well, not straight, you're going to have to attenuate, but into an injector or into a coil, even if you could get the control, a signal, you won't need to attenuate, but you know, if you're checking the actual circuit, you're going to have to. You don't want to hurt your scope, but you know, it's still faster than getting out the paddle probe. All right, guys, I'm going to set that up. Well, first, let me show you. This is the strut tower. It's got the V6. It's 2.7. But what I liked about it is, like, you know, anything in it. I really like the color. It's hard to see on the camera, but he put his own racing stripes on it. Yeah, you know, kids made it go faster, right? But it's a pretty cool car, and that's a good time. You know, you can see the paint a little bit more. Let me turn the light on. It's nice, like metallic jade green. Got the LEDs in it, but you know how you get whenever you get a new car, you want to take care of everything that's wrong with it. But this is probably easier. I'm going to put the camera on a tripod anyways, but I'm going to focus it on there. If I shake it now, it's going to, all you're going to see is me going up and down too. All right, guys, just focus on that if you can and hear the sound. I'm going to try to shake it without bumping the tripod. That's the sound we're hearing. Whenever you hit the brakes hard, you can hear that click up, forward or back. And just in case that sound didn't pick up the greatest, so well, it's hard to hold it there, but you get the idea. But that's going to be a quick fix. We're going to order a couple preloaded struts. Makes it go, you know, so much easier. And what I was thinking, there's not too many intake lines on this, or vacuum lines on the intake. But right in the back, we have a vacuum line coming off. We have this one going over to the booster. There's a line right there, so I'm going to just put the pulse sensor straight into that. The battery is in the trunk. Whenever I do like a cranking test, we could tell the charging voltage, but I think I'm going to have to get in the trunk to do this right, because I know I did take a couple measurements on a couple that had this positive lead. You get a good waveform, but you don't get an accurate waveform. All right, guys, I just wanted to show you how easy it was just to wheel to the back of the car. Usually we're in the front, but now we're in the back. And now that I'm using like a whole cart just for diagnostics, everything's with me. All my cables are with me, my amp clamps are with me. There's no running back and forth. And now that I'm not using a monitor, I didn't even need to plug the card in. I did just to charge the phone, but that's the only thing I need back here. You could do all these tests with no external power. The tablet will actually power the Hantek, so it's a good deal the whole way around. And just a quick tip, if you do encounter any of these refrigerator magnets, they make great, you know, wire holders to hold your test leads so they don't get all tangled up. These ones from Harbor Freight are pretty cool too, but those things seem to be working out better. All right, I'm going to hook up the amp clamp and I'm going to hook up the voltage. And being so in the back of the car, if you wanted to do two different tests at the same time, if you were going for straight charging tests on the voltage, you could do voltage and you could do, you know, exhaust pulse sensor. And guys, never forget to calibrate any scope you use before you use it. An 8 scope, just go to settings and calibration and calibrate 0 level. And that's just telling you to short them out. Calibration's complete. Done. Now you're ready to go on. Now we see an 8 scope. It has the 1008 reading. That's right there. We're at 0 with it. Now I'm going to put it in the amp clamp on the battery. Then we'll see what kind of charging test it does, and then we'll see if we could disable it get a relative compression check while we got the amp clamp around it and the voltage around it. But now we're going to let it run. We're going to just see how it's charging. Okay guys, as moved around the back, I flipped the 8 scope around just so I could get a good view of it, and I'm on the driver's side to crank it. I just have my amp clamp going around the positive wire coming off the battery, and I have 2 alligator clips just going into the front, 2 BNCs. Now I'm going to just hit record. Now let me zero in first, and I'm going to hit start. Turn the key. I always go for 20 milliseconds. It's I remember on Motor Age, the trainer series on YouTube, he always says he has a 20-20 rule, and that's what always comes up to mind every time I go to set a scope up. I picture him saying, you know, 20-20. And I can't remember his name, but I remember his rule. But we could see in the buffer that we got the cranking event. Now we have 1 minute and 50 seconds, so I'm going to increase all that load on the engine that I can. Okay, that's a short buffer, but for this scope, that's going to be excellent. Right there, we see the key on. We see the cranking. Same on the amperage. If we zoom in on the amperage, like this is what our waveform would have looked like. If we want to clean up the voltage, what I like doing first is making sure it doesn't change. Put a roller down, try to get to the bottom. Pretty close, we're like 1020. Now if I put a filter on, if I put a low pass on, 33 hertz, cleans it up, but we lost a little amplitude. Take the filter off. Well, it doesn't show in live taking it off, but at any rate, where we had it at 10 and even at 1039, that's excellent for the battery. That was load testing the battery starting it. Whenever it started, if it drops down to 8, some people say 8.5, but if you're below 9, you know, you might have some issues. But we could see as it recovers also, we could see the key on. We could see the battery actually recovering voltage. If we were at the lowest, if we were at 10.2, and we're back up to 13.5 volts. And as we go, it just keeps increasing. We're up to 14.13 volts. And now this would be where I started turning everything on. And the lowest we dip be 12.74. So that's good, and you could see exactly what causes what. Now this would have been when I was increasing the load. The alternator calls for a little bit more, increasing the load, drops, increasing the load, and then as you shut off, things come back. But alright, that was pretty interesting. What I would like to do, see if you tap the button, the green button, you have 2 or 3 seconds that you can make just that waveform big. If you wanted to check your amperage, we could see the compression humps. So this scope would do a very good job at the relative compression, charging. It's good information to have. You could take I already have a cursor up here. If you wanted to go down to the amperage to see how many amps. Where I lost it now. I think I threw it off the screen. There we go. The lowest point, if we come back, it's the probe's facing the wrong way because we're in the negative with it. But 336 amps it took to spin that engine. Not very bad. Everything seems to be working good. We don't see no dropout. Even the detail in here is pretty damn good for that scope. Because this would be, I believe as your solenoid's charging, you're taking some, it's building enough of a magnetic field to kick your starter motor off. That's the drop there. And I might be wrong on this, but I believe that bump right there, that's it actually, the solenoid actually starting to click, and then boom, you got your starter turning. Same place where the voltage drops. Oh no, that's pretty good images for what we have there. Where they went, like I said, all you do is click the button. You'll see the OK up in the corner. As long as that says OK, you can move this waveform and make it bigger. I'm sorry. So that's a pretty good quick charging test. Now what I'm going to do is I think being I'm back here, I'm going to keep the amp clamp on to do relative compression, and at the same time see if I could put the pulse sensor in the exhaust, being I'm in the back of the car. Alright, let me set that up and we'll keep moving on. But before I do any of that, being this is Aaron's car and I'm going to be saving this, I'm going to just hit the save. Go back. I'm going to put charger. Charging. Nope, or something like that. Alright. Okay, this is the Rocky, the pulse sensor. I just keep it, it's nice having things as close as, you know, opening up the drawer and there it is. So, I mean, yeah, I can't say enough about the diagnostics cart, but you know, you got to do what you got to do. If you're a mobile mechanic or you don't have a garage or a place to keep this, pack outs work good. Now, and there's just nothing as smooth as having a cart, but you know, we got to do what we got to do. For years, I, you know, didn't have one, so now it's kind of nice building one and seeing what I do need, but I just know it's nice. I took a step towards my other toolbox to get a fuse puller or a pair of pliers. You know, I had these in the diag box, so out it came. But what I built a while ago, I've never used it in the exhaust. I never used it at all. I just made a water pipe with a brass fitting, then I siliconed it. And I'm going to just plug this into the sensor and put this up in the exhaust. We're going to see what kind of pattern we get with the engine not running while I'm cranking. And then maybe while the engine's running, we'll see if we get a stronger pulse. On Rocky's video on the intake, you get a bigger pulse without the engine running, just during cranking. So, but I'm not sure about the exhaust. We're still going to be blowing off some exhaust, but I don't know if it's any stronger running or not. But I mean, hey, this is how we find out. Okay, that's how we look coming out the back on channel 1. I'm going right in on channel 1. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to turn channel 1 back on. Oh, I didn't even know I was recording there. But we're going to take the amplitude down to 2.3. I'm going to keep it on that 1X probe. Now these pulses don't mean anything. Like what Eugene said, is they're just a pull down sensor. So when they get hit and they move, they leave a mark on the scope. And what we're looking for is balance. This is a 6-cylinder, so it should have 6 fairly even exhaust, you know, pulses. And then that would be the point. If these were all good, all the same, you'd stop. But if you did find one that was a little bit low, that's where it gets a little bit trickier, and you're going to want to definitely have a sync. And that's it. Probably either, you could probably get it from a box back here somehow, some way, but that would be coming from the front. Alrighty, I'm at the back of the car, and I have both of these on, well, for some reason channel 1 lets me go down to 2.3 volt scale, and channel 2 lets me go down to 2.4 still. So I'm going to just turn it on, put the foot to the floor, and crank it. Hey, looks like we got something on there. Let me stop it. Well, we see nice compression humps. And then these would be the pulses in the exhaust. It's definitely, like if you were looking for a burn exhaust valve, there would be more pressure. Well, there'd be pressure at times where there shouldn't be any pressure, put it that way. Whenever you're going up on the exhaust stroke, you'd also have kind of a peak, but then on the compression stroke, you wouldn't have as much of a hit. These ones are all fairly close. I mean, we can see some differences, but you know, not a lot to be alarmed about. These are what we're looking at. This, I'd imagine in between, I'm not certain, but I think that's what would be, you know, the sensor returning to 0, because they don't measure anything. They just get hit one direction. And Eugene calls them a pull down, like they get hit and they drop voltage. So what would be inverted or what wouldn't be for one of these things, I mean, I don't believe it matters. We're just looking at the peaks. Up here we could tell these are when it's getting hit the hardest. But that's a pretty nice image for being on, you see the oscillations, because it's just, you know, piezo or piezo sensor. It just gets hit one way or the other. You can make them yourself out of I seen just out of what's in a smoke detector, the alarm, you could make one of these pulse sensors. But we also see the compression humps are great. We don't see nothing higher than it should be. You could see how on the exhaust we have, like, you know, repetition going both ways. But the research I did, if you had a problem, one of these would be majorly dropped out. So we're all pretty close. We're seeing the same repetitive pattern, so that's pretty neat. Ran those two tests together, no problem. And these you could also filter, like the amp. Well, we do have a filter on him. We have a low pass filter. Let's see, go to 33 on it. Somebody in the comments told me about the 33 hertz, and look how that cleans up. I mean, that's an excellent RC test. Me being the curious one, I'm going to shut off channel 2, and I'm going to just see what the pulse looks like with the engine running. Oh. There's where I want to be. Hit record. We're going to let her go. Okay, now I'm going to give her a little fuel. And see if they increase. Let's see what we got. You notice the pulses do look different than just cranking. This was at idle. This is roughly 2000. Now they're starting to look more like cranking, but not a lot of. And then this would be on the hard rev here. Interesting. This would have been a snap. Huh. Interesting waveform for sure. Well, guys, this got silly really quick, but that's part of the reason for the video. The Hantek 1008C, I mean, it works pretty good with 8-scope air. I mean, on its native software, it's not too bad. It's just a kind of weird, unique system. It's only unique to it. But you're doing the basics. You're measuring voltage and time. It's just not giving you a lot of the time to measure. But this would be just pushing the limitations of it I mean, we're still getting a signal, but it's an ugly one. But I'll show you what I got. All right. Now I've put the pulse sensor in the back of the intake. I've back probed one primary coil. I probed one injector, and then I hooked up the HT25 paddle probe. So what we're going to be getting is a pulse signal, primary signal off the coil, a secondary signal off the coil, and a fuel injector signal. Now, the fuel injector, I have a ×10 attenuator on it, and the coil, I have a ×20 attenuator on it. The pulse sensor and the HT25 are just as is. So, I'm going to set up the tripod so you guys could see this. I mean, this would be one of them things for survival. If this was the only scope I had, I probably could get some signals. I mean, you could see what's there, but I'll let you guys be the judge whenever I go. And just tip, these light bars from Harbor Freight, these Icon light bars, I've had these for a couple years now, and they work great for keeping your leads back. And I always stress to stay away from the car. I see people, I cringe sometimes because you don't know what videos they cut out. They have laptops, they have everything, they have leads going everywhere, and it's, you know, that's a lot of leads to just have laying on the hood. So I like taking them up and out. Works with the pressure transducer also, plus it gives you a little bit of light. Alright, I'm going to set this up and start it up, and I'll just show you what we got. Alright guys, this is oscilloscope mode. I'm going to just start it and then start the car. Okay, the pump. So make sure all the channels are on. We got a lot of time on there. Okay, I do not have the paddle probe on there yet. I'm going to just put it on there, see if I get a signal with it. And there we did. That's the paddle probe there. The yellow is the pulse sensor. The green is the fuel injector, and the blue is the coil primary. Now I'm going to move over to the automotive module. Hit start. Should we get some secondary patterns? Okay, now I'm going to stop it. I'm going to stop the car. We want to go back to somewhere where the paddle probe was also picking up. Okay, as you can see, the resolution gets, you know, pretty bad, but that's the main. And there we have the blue's the primary and the pink is the secondary, so at least you know, you could line something up if you had to. You could see your fuel injection. It's not the greatest image of it, but I mean, you could see it getting pulled down the ground. Gets a little bit dotty. But the pulse sensor isn't much of a load on it, but it was, I just wanted to see how much it could load, or it could take. All loaded up. The paddle probe's still doing, they're still making a mark where they should. And that's pretty cool there, that the primary and the secondaries, I mean, that followed. But the thing that kind of surprised me at first was just how far away the actual fuel injection event is from firing. Like if this was the fuel injection event, then it fires, but it would be, you know, we're on the second stroke here. And you could use a phaser lens on it if you wanted to, but that might get a little bit tedious trying to find things to line up with pretty good. Well, you could still, I mean, this is one of them, if you were on the desert island things, you still have all your readings on the side. It has for both, 2 scales aside. That's just what 4 channels on it looks like. And we're matching up. From afar, it doesn't look too bad. It's just zoomed in, we don't have that resolution. Now I want to try it one time and let it go into page mode. Let it use a lot of resolution. It's not going to be in real time though. When you look at the waveform, you're going to see pages, which would be like one whole screen of this. So you won't be able to do any timing from the beginning and the end of it. It's all going to be, it's going to be your data, but it's not going to be on in time, if that makes any sense. Okay, I moved the sample rate up to 600 kilosamples a second. So I'm not knowing what to expect. I just imagine a lot of pages. Okay, we're going to record. These are all pages rolling now. Okay, I got a couple secondary on there. Now I'm going to stop it. You see, as you zoom in, your signal is there, but it's on these pages. Each one of these is a screen, like of the oscilloscope, so you can find your signal. Part of it anyway. There we go. But we could see, you know, there's more definition in it, but not a lot. Trying to find a good event there. And we don't see much more than we were seeing. Looks more like a normal pattern, but still not very precise. Now we'll say I'll shut off the paddle probe channel, channel number 4. And then we'll do this. We'll say, see, soon as they turn blue, we have 3 choices, 0.2, 0.5, or 0.9. The blue is what we'll have our regular data. It won't be in page mode. All the white is page mode. So if we start on, we'll say 19. And then we'll let it collect data. And we'll stop it. See, there's less pages. As you scroll, the pages are bigger. See how it looks more like a typical injector there? You're getting more resolution, and also because I'm off on one channel, you're getting more resolution, but you're not getting in a straight continuous line where we could actually measure time. That's just the fuel injector there with the pulse sensor. Now if we find a primary signal, where did it go? Did we lose it? There we go. Just make you a little bit bigger. I mean, you could get more detail that way if you're just looking for a particular thing. And the least amount of channels you have on, the more resolution you will get. If we shut off the pulse sensor also, record, stop, and that's a pretty good fuel injection waveform. We could see the pintle hump, could see everything on that. Ignition, that's not what I'm looking for there. See, ignition pattern, does it need inverted? No, it does not. Look much better that way. Look like we see a burn line down here. But the KV spike should be up top, unless this is some kind of wave spark, which I doubt, or a very low firing line, or it can't pick it up. There we go. Now we got a lot more definition. Could even zoom in and see the oscillations, but this isn't in real time. It looks like it, but it's not. But you do get the more channels you shut off, the better images you do get. And that's it, guys. That's about the best you could get without being in pages mode. That's the highest resolution that you could just roll data in the buffer and be on time. But it's, you know, there's cheaper scopes out there that, like on a U-scope, you don't even get the 2 channels. That would be more useful in some situations, but that's the best you could do with this. But what I want to do next is just shut off while I'm on here. I still have everything hooked up to it. Now something like a pulse sensor, it should be fairly easy for it. Whenever we stop, now when we go back to look at this, zoom in a little bit. Does very good on the pulses. And we got resolution, we have everything there. But we're not using an attenuator, and see what there we're starting to get a little bit jagged. We're not using an attenuator on that channel, which I don't believe makes much of a difference in the image, but I think it's just because it's such a low voltage signal, and it's not fast. Okay guys, means I have everything hooked up, still hooked up. I'm going to plug 8 scope in, or I'm going to plug the HS512 into it, just see what that fuel injector and primary ignition looks like on 8 scope. Okay guys, I got 8 scope hooked up. Taking a real quick waveform. I'm going to stop it, shut the car off. I was taking the same image, but I was up on 75 kilosamples a second. We could see on this would be the injector. We get much clearer results on that. We could do some pretty good. You could see the pintle hump. You could see, you know, how long it's going down. You can measure how long it's being pulled down the ground. And that's all right. That's a pretty nice image there. I'll go across till we find out. This is, okay, primary's never as pretty as secondary, but yeah, it's not too bad of a primary signal. We're down to, like, I mean, the burn line, the oscillations. It's actually a really good primary signal. Back to the injectors, which one did I want I'm just trying to get the waveforms closer together. Let's see. I think that's just a fold of my big hands here. And I don't know what test you would be going after an injector and coil, but I mean, there's plenty that could happen, you know. It's just nice to be able to get a good image without having to worry about if the scope that you're using at the time is going to cut it. Because, I mean, you could definitely get some sinks off of it, but it's just getting that definition's hard. So that was big. Usually lets me adjust them. It will let me tone down the green now. I figured you tone it down a little bit. And then, as I mentioned, you could zoom in pretty good. We could still see the pintle hump there. All right, let me shut that off.
Because I just ran it one more time on using the HS512. I just wanted to see what the pulse sensor, and while I had the primary ignition of the coil on there, I was just playing around with the phase rollers, moving them around. We're not looking for anything in the phase like a crank signal or anything like that. I was just seeing, any relationship to the pulses, what to look for if, in the future if I do need, have a mechanical problem. But that's a good quick way. Usually on these cars, let me move this. Usually on a car, if you have a battery up front underneath the hood, just as quick as you're getting that charging system, you could get that pulse, the green trace. If you see something dropped out in there, you need to find a sync with which cylinder that is. Like now we have a sync off that primary coil. If this was missing the pulse, right, the same coil that we're on, we know which one we're on. If not, we could figure out with our firing order which pulse belongs to what. It sticks and repeats itself. So, it's a pretty quick way if you're doing a charging system test, like with the battery up here. I just didn't want to do like an RC test or anything that far away from the battery. I'm sure you could have, but we're measuring how many amps that battery's putting out. I wanted to be as close to it as I could. If I had a problem or if I had a difference, you could always voltage drop the wire from up here to the back, but there's no problems with just checking known good. Well, checking running good anyways, but playing around with the scope and basically showing you the limitations of the Hantek. All right, guys, let me clean this mess up. Let me give you a final shot. I didn't zoom in there. I mean, this is how good we're looking on the primary side. That's not bad at all. And we're seeing the burn line. You see the same thing as secondary. Secondary, I've just found that I do usually get a better waveform. But, the primary side of this coil, this is a very, very good signal. I don't know if I can find another one. I just didn't zoom in on that. I just wanted to show you the difference in the end between that and the Hantek. Getting a primary without moving the probe at all, we're still exactly where we were in that Hantek, the 1008C. And then it's just when you zoom out and you want to see when you want to see the pulse sensor, that's what I was showing it to you as. I just want you to see how good of a primary it was also. All right, guys, that was probably the most pointless video you're going to see, but what I did, I wanted to overload well, not overload, just see how many channels the Hantek, the 1008C would take. Now, what I did, like most everybody else, because the H-scope isn't on eBay or Amazon unless somebody's selling one used, or you find a couple of the boards. But whenever you do get in this, you're watching Paul Danner, you're watching Eric O, you're watching Pine Hollow, you're watching all these. I mean, there's all these great guys out there with scopes. The Snap-on training's free on YouTube. I mean, you learn a lot on that too. I mean, even if you don't have a Snap-on scope. But the main thing we're practicing is we're practicing the hookup. We're practicing reading wiring schematics. We're practicing back probing. We're practicing keeping our cables out of the fan belt. I mean, we're practicing a lot more than just reading a waveform. If you have the 1008C, I mean, you could see it's going to get limited, but it did great on the charging test, did great on the pulse sensor. I know they do good on the pressure transducers. On the cam crank correlation, they do great. I mean, there's a lot of things they do. I mean, I'd just go 1-2 channels at the most, because we've seen that 512 was a lot more image for a 2-channel scope compared to an 8. But, they got their limitations, but it's still the same thing. This is when you build your leads. This is when you get good, not good but this is when you get high amp clamps. This is when you get low amp clamps. This charger was a little bit, the battery's in the trunk, so but you're still doing the same thing. If the battery was in the front, you could do the battery and that pulse sensor. That's why they call them first look sensors. If you hook that up, it's either going to be good or bad. If it's good, you're done with it. You put it away. Now you got another channel for something else. But it's quick to check the battery, quick to check the intake pulses. If you see something dropping out bad, go that direction. It's something mechanically wrong with your engine. Now, was it valid sticking it up the tailpipe beings we were in the back? I don't know. I was planning on doing it from the front, but then I remembered the batteries in the back. So, but I'm sure we would have seen something. If there was no compression, if there was low compression, if there was, running, we might have seen the burnt valve. But these things take some skill to read, and that's one thing I like about 8-scope. It's very easy to save. It's the same tablet I take in the house and I play games on, whatever I do. I can just pull up waveform, start looking at it, just on the fly. You could be on a bus and look at it. But anyways, that was the main point of it. I just wanted to try out the pulse sensor. I wanted to try the charging test with the pulse sensor, and we ended up doing both. So it's a win-win. I wanted to look at this charger. We're going up to see the Amish tomorrow, drive around for a while. So I just wanted to make sure it was good to go, and hey, just keep practicing. All right, guys, thanks a lot for watching. It means a lot. Adios.